between chapter 4 and chapter 5, there's really no breaks between these two chapters. You know, the scene is still set going into chapter 5, like it was in chapter 4. The scene is still set from John's view from God's throne. So he's still looking down from the third heaven down into the earth, still looking down. God is sitting upon his throne, but what is recognized that on his throne, he's actually holding this, this scroll. We don't have scrolls nowadays. We have books, but it's a scroll that he have in his hand that is sealed. This is what John is envisioning. And in this scroll or this book, has never been opened. It's never been opened. Now, the importance of this book is being sealed. Cannot be overemphasized about this book being sealed. It cannot be overemphasized. This book is the key to completely understand the rest of the book of Revelation. That's what it is. Now, this book or this scroll is like the official document of the last days of human history, the climatic events, the practicalities of dealing with the universe. Everything is inside this book or this scroll. This unveils the world's future and is about to unfold right before one man's very eyes. Talking about John, it's about to be unfolded in his eyes. And is detailed here in Revelation chapter 1, verse 1. In verse 1 of chapter 1, it says, "The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John." So John knew right off the bat that this was some information that he had to get out. Now back to why I stated that chapter 4 and chapter 5 should not be broken, or better yet, how these two chapters are connected. Because it's more of an example, follow this, it's more of an example as to how the book of Revelation, better yet, the entire Bible, was laid out for us to understand. Meaning that the chapters and verse divisions in the modern Bibles are not a part of the original text of the scriptures. Meaning that the book of Revelation, including the entire Bible, but we're going to use Revelation for an example, that it's actually one continuous long document, a long document that has no break. It's just like one big long scroll, one long document, and it has no break inside there. Now, then even with the original scriptures, there's no spaces between the words, no spaces between the sentences, no punctuation marks, no nothing. It's just sentence by sentence by sentence, writing down, no breaks at all. Now, as the publishing process started to integrate into human history, that's when we started to see chapters and verses, divisions, all of a sudden being inserted to make the study and reading of the Bible easier. So instead of just reading sentence by sentence by sentence, this is where the punctuations, this is where the chapters and verses start to come into play, so that when we open up the Word of God, we'll have some kind of structure into reading what we're seeing. And so this is the same case pretty much with chapter 4 and chapter 5, as these two chapters actually is joined together. And the way how you can understand that is because the first word in chapter 5, the very first word in chapter 5 is and in some versions have then. So when you see these words like this starting off with a sentence going into another chapter, it's actually a continuation. So chapter 5 is technically a continuation of chapter 4 in the book of Revelation. Now, chapter 5 continues, because what we started off learning, that chapter 5 continues with John's vision from heaven looking down into the earth, because he was told in chapter 4 to come up, because the door is open, to come up here. And that was mentioned in Revelation chapter 4 verse 1. Now, we see something here in chapter 5 that is not mentioned, in chapter 4. And what is not mentioned, the one on the throne has a scroll or has a book in his hand. In Revelation chapter 5, verse 1, it says, "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals." Now, the book of Revelation is basically a book of books. Revelation is a book of books. It's the book of life. It's the book of works. You would say it's a book of testimonies. It's a book of books. Now, it's a scroll that's written on the front and the back, which indicates there's more to come, or that there's more that's added. And then that's when you recognize in the word says how it's sealed with 7 seals. Here we see it right here again in verse 1 in chapter 5. "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals." Now, here's what I have planned out. Okay, so this is the scroll. Envisioning what John is seeing. So this is the scroll I have in my hand. Now, chapter 5 tells us that there's like a title deed. There's a title deed that contains what will happen within the 7 seals that will be released. Now, the 7 seals is basically like this. So the scroll with 7 seals is what John is trying to describe. Now, again, everything that John is seeing in heaven is not literal. He's basically going by things that he is familiar with, what was common to him at that time from past history that he knows. So that's what he is trying to relate with what he's seeing. Now, it suggests that these events will unfold consecutively, one after another. But in reality, they will unfold in a different manner. What John was looking at or thinking, or what he had in mind, was a Roman scroll. That's what he had in mind. And yes, we're still dealing with verse 1 in chapter 5. Still dealing with verse 1 in chapter 5. Now, the book is written on the front and on the back of the pages. So the book is actually rolled up like a scroll. That's how things were back in those days. Now, remember, during that period of time, there was no printing process, and better yet, they didn't have books as we know today. With books, it wasn't like that back then. So the printing process was not laid out like that back then. So a large amount of writing was done, but it was joined together like pages. And I'm gonna give you an example here. So I'm gonna open up one of these type of scrolls that I had put together for you guys. My modern day sense. So here's a scroll, but here, those lines right there that you're seeing, it was basically it was like a piece of string, that actually held pieces of paper together. And when it held the pieces of paper together, it was like a long scroll where they had to read from. Now, when the writing was completed, it was rolled up. As you see, as they put everything together, everything was rolled up, put together, and then after they did it, that's when they tied some thread around the scroll, and then they would actually seal. Everybody would get some wax, and they would put on the end of the paper to seal the document or seal the scroll. Now, still, even in this particular time, you rarely seen someone write something on the back of the scroll, because if something was written on the back of the scroll, it would expose what is written on the last sheet when it was rolled up and tied up. So that was not normal. But we note that here in verse 1 in chapter 5, that what the Lord was holding in his hand, he was holding in his hand a scroll that was written on the front and on the back. Verse 1 says again, a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. So there's a lot of information in the scroll that the Lord had in his hand.